All right, so hello all. Hello, all of you Builderinos. I am Shard632. I am a mentor for the MHCP program. I mainly focus on TypeScript and um, game mechanics and game loops and progressions and stuff like that. I don't generally do any modeling, but I do a lot of coding. So, so in this session, I'm going to talk about the mobile player controls, and that's also going to include a bit about focus interaction again, though I've talked about that some before, talked about both of these before, but just want to really talk about, using these for your mobile games. And then so main focus is here, after this session, hopefully you'll all be able to make your own player managers for locally scripted stuff. That's a common thing you're going to need to do for certain parts of the API, especially on mobile. So, and like the example code that's in some of the tutorials is not very easy to reuse. So a really simple one, I think, will help everybody out. And then we're going to configure and update player inputs for mobile in VR. We have the player inputs like be multimodal and change how, depending on how you interact um, with the UI. And then we're going to add some, at the end, we're going to add some focus interaction for mobile onto the end of that, of this little tutorial to just show how that works. And then there'll be some wrap up discussion about like some things challenges you could use for yourself to go forward and try to apply these things if like you're a beginner or intermediate or advanced, especially on the advanced side, how to use this in VR. Again, the obligatory skills matrix slide. Uh, just we're talking about scripting and mechanics design, um, meta horizon system. So that part of the stuff. Um, and then just sort of a quick overview of the workshop. It's recorded. They'll be posted later. They're definitely posting these a lot faster now, so it might only be like a day or two before it's up in the forums. Um, Raise your hand if you have a question. Pretty much if you have something, just raise your hand and hopefully I will see it and mention it in the chat and I'll try to answer it. Keep yourself muted so there's no background noise that accidentally stream comes in. So questions at designated times. There's really the Q&A is going to be mostly throughout as I go. So just pipe up, be active in the chat. That's always helpful. Use chat technical engines. Yes, sure. There's a survey at the end. It's very, very important that you fill out the surveys. We're not getting like a lot of traction on the surveys. So for these workshops, and it's important for them to understand like what's good workshop and especially like what kinds of workshops that they do in the future. And then yes, you can contact me in the forums or elsewhere where you can. But yes, I don't usually respond to DMs. Anyway, so this is our agenda really quick. Like I think I mentioned, we're going to create a simple player manager for things that need per player local scripts. And this is like comes up with cameras, player controls, focus interactions, single player custom UIs, or sometimes you have default scripts, but you need one of them per player for some reason because you have like, a world with 8 people and you want to give each person a sword or something like that. And it's a default scripted sword, but like you just suddenly want to hand one out to each player when they come in. So it works for default scripted stuff too. It's like if you have something that you need to hand out per player in the world right when they join, and you want a quick way of like giving them one, and if it's locally scripted, quickly transferring ownership of it to that person. This is the way to go. Just want to mention that they've hinted in this latest week's release notes that there's some gizmo that might do this now, but no one seems to have access to the gizmo yet. So it's not very hard to do yourself. And if they do provide us a gizmo that does this for us someday, then just use the gizmo. But for now, the gizmo I think does spawning also. This is like a non-spawning based approach. And then after that, once we have that player manager, we're going to configure some multimodal player inputs, and then we're going to configure some focus interaction, and then we're going to do some discussion of advanced VR features. There are some important document links which I can drop into the chat, I think. But these are on the, oops, these are on the Learn site that if you're want to know more about custom input and focused interaction and all those things, like these are some key docs that you should know. So I'm just drop them right now into the chat so people have them for later. And then I'm going to post a bunch of this stuff into a into the channel once it's over. We'll put it up in the forum or elsewhere. All right, so I saw this week's Horizon update mentioned the player pooling gizmo that allows player to have prefabs generated player. Yes, that's what I was talking about, my case. But no one has the gizmo yet. I would presume it would be somewhere here under gizmos, and we drop down and there would be like a thing, but like I don't see it yet. So it possibly is used for PetSpark. Those are definitely per player. So we're going to start out with like we're going to need to make a player control. So like we need to make our first script. We need to create the new script, player manager, and then we will launch TypeScript from that. So as always, I hate the HC thing, so I immediately get rid of that. It's my least favorite part about the. And then I just switch over to be using imports like that. So so this is the player manager. So this guy is going to listen for each player entering the world. Override. And you just want to connect a code block event, equals entity. One player enter world, and you're going to get a player. And when you have this player, you're going to want to assign them their player specific thing. So this is the point where you have the new player, and now you're going to want to give them something. Yes, you get a copy of the recording. It's going to be posted later. So this is where this is the point where you're going to want to like do this player just entered your world, and now you want to give them a copy of this player control that we're gonna have a list of. So we're gonna have just a list of player controls, which are entities. And the way you're going to want to do this is we're going to make these in the world, and we're going to give them a tag, which is called player control. And so we'll just make as many of them as we need. So we'll just say this dot player controls get on this side, along with get entities with tag. So all we're doing here is we're basically just telling right on world start, do this in start, don't do this in pre-start, because sometimes things aren't fully ready in pre-start. Only in start do I really recommend getting entities with tags. We're going to go find all of them that have player control on them. We're going to stick them in a list. And then the really easy way is like once we have all those, and you just have to make sure you make enough of these for your world. So if your world is a 10-player world, you're just going to make 10 copies of this player control entity, and that way you'll know you have the right amount. You might make a couple of extra just in case, like every now and then things go over, like extra players can get into the world, especially if they have safety specialists in there or moderators or stuff like that. So maybe if you have a 10-player world, you make 12 of them just in case. So this is super simple. You're going to get your player control from your list. And you're just going to index in by the player's index. So, and So this way, if you have like 10 player controls because you put 10 of them in your world, and player comes in and they're the fourth player in the world, they'll have index, something between 0 and 9. You're just going to go use their index and get one of those 10 player controls you had, and you're just going to assign it to them. You're just going to say, yep, this is yours. And that's really all there is to it. And like this is like the brain dead simplest, player manager that that you can make. And it doesn't have a lot of moving parts. It's just really, really simple. Just requires things to be tagged correctly for all of the per player things, and that you have enough of them. And then it just works. So this is what I'd recommend you use for player controls. So how do you hook this up in the world? So in here, we would, so say we'd run this on just, I usually use like an empty object for these guys, attach that player manager to it. Probably, let me make right now the other one, the player control, we're going to need layer. It's going to be our this will be the thing we're actually going to do the control on. So phones control, things control. What's here? Well, you're right. Why? Oh, class. This works. Right, so that's compiling. So we'll have so we have our player manager here, and then we'll just make another empty object for the player control, attach our player control to it. We'll tag this guy with player control. And then, we'll make this script, player control script is going to be local. Make sure you remember to do that, because otherwise things won't work. And then, you can just make a few of these, if you had a 4-player world. And now you have 4 player controls, and you have a player manager, and they're all going to automatically be managed for you. So for instance, if we went back to our code, and here we could say const player equals list.world.get local player. This would just say we're owned by a real player. And back here in our world, if we go and run this guy, seems to finish compiling. You can see that the player charge joined, and this real player charge, so it assigned that to me, that new player control to me, and it transferred its owner to me. So like it all just worked. So anyway, any questions about the player control, the player manager thing? One more thing I often do here is just to I usually have something like this in my player manager, which like makes sure it tells me how many player controls it found, just so that when I'm starting the world, I'm sure that it's not like having some problem finding them if I forgot to tag them or something like that, or I didn't make enough of them. That way, when I run the world, I get player manager start with 4 player controls. I'm like, okay, good, I've got enough. That's all set up correctly. All right, so that is like the super quick on how to do player managers. And now I'm going to jump over into talking about working on player controls, unless there's any questions about the player manager thing. Um, if not, I will start on the player control things. So this player control, I'm going to make like a multimodal UI. So it's going to basically have a button that you press, and then when you press the button, it goes into like player movement mode, and that lets you move the player around, and then you can exit back into like normal mode. So that's sort of the gist of this guy. So basically, if your script here for your control is not owned by a player, a local player, like you just don't want to do anything because none of these things are going to actually work. So it's only in the case where your player is not the server player that you really want to go and set up, these custom inputs. So, and I usually put them all in separate functions, so it's easier to add them and remove them as needed. So I might have like an add start input um, to start with, and you know, add start input is just going to be uh, a really quick thing that I'm going to have an input for this. So I'm going to make a little private um, start input as a player input. And I'm using the question mark because I'm saying it's fine if it's not defined, because I'm not going to have one when I start until I actually build one. The start input. And then this is where I'm using the player control API to connect to a local input. And then this is where you now start to need to make decisions, and you need to go look at the documentation and figure out like what input action do you want to use and what button icon do you want to use. Um, I think personally, I find like the easiest way to look up the input actions is to go and look at the code, because so you have these player input actions, and there's this nice table in here. And I don't know if this table exists in the documentation anywhere. I don't think I've found it, but it tells you for like each of the player input actions, like what is it on in VR? What is it going to be in desktop? What is it going to be in mobile? So, jump is A in VR, but space on desktop. And so you can see that there's all these different, these are all the different inputs you have the ability to choose from. And you can see how they're going to be mapped in the three different platforms that are supported. In this case, I'm going to just use the right secondary. Let's go player input action, right secondary, which is the B button is going to be the thing that's going to make it activate if you were using VR, but it's going to be a button on screen for web and mobile. And then I need to choose a button icon. And then this is where that one of those web pages that I referenced earlier, these action buttons, there's like a nice little thing at the bottom which just shows you all of the buttons. It shows you some buttons that don't exist though, so you kind of have to there's no close and there's no call overlay button, but most of the rest of these do exist, so you can kind of get an idea of what they look like. I think I'm just going to use the little lightning bolt one, the special, here is as my action here, as my button. And then the last thing, well, then you have to provide this. Just remember, you always this disposable object is necessary. It's just always going to be this, which is the component you're using. And then I'm going to use, you get one last thing you can do, which you can say where on the screen you want to put it. And you can use preferred button placement. You only get two options. You get button placement of center or default. So I'm going to put this one in the center just for be interesting. Default puts it in its default position. It's clear that they seem to be thinking they might add more someday, but right now we just have center and default. And then the most important thing is that if you do this and then you run, it will show up when you jump into the world, assuming it compiles. Can't find button. Oh, I forgot to import it. Fine. I often do this in TypeScript. I just tell it to ignore the types e.ts because there's so many, it gives you so many weird errors if you ever open up the d.ts files and they're all bogus. So yeah. So now it's compiled. So if I jump in here, it shows up and you think that it's now working, but like it's not actually hooked up to anything. And these guys show up even if they're not connected because you can use them without callbacks. And so that's an important thing to sort of understand is that this just puts the button on the screen. It doesn't mean it's actually going to do anything unless you actually add some more stuff. So there's two ways you can make it do something. And one of the ways is just to add a callback to it. So you can say, I'm going to start up input. I want to register a callback to this guy. In these callbacks, they get two things. They get the action, which is kind of redundant because it's the same action that you just put up here. It's always going to be right secondary. And you get pressed, which is like whether this is a press or a release on the thing. I mean, the action is useful if you wanted to have just one callback and you sent everything to just one callback and then that callback figured out, oh, it's this action or that action. But personally, I find it just simpler to just have a different method for each one, because that way it's easier to track in my code. So so this is going to just send on when the start input's pressed, it's going to or release, it's going to send a message to this onStart input function. And so what am I going to do when they press this guy? This is a thing that's going to switch us into the mode, but I only really care about it when they press. So remember, like we're getting this press and we're getting release events. So make sure that you are only handling one of them. Otherwise, you might get weird situations where it seems to be doubling your actions. And that's because you're probably handling release too. And so just make sure that if you don't care about releases, if you just care about presses, make sure to like ignore the releases. If it's not pressed, I don't care. I just care about pressed. So here we're going to switch modes. And so what does that mean? So we want that button to go away, the button which was like go into this mode. And like you can't just, there is this unregister callback. And you're like, oh, I can just unregister the callback and then it will be done. But no, because unregistering the callback doesn't make it go away on the screen. It just makes it not listen to the button presses anymore. So you need to actually, unfortunately, you need to take down the whole thing. And so I usually make like another method just to manage removing the inputs. So I would say remove and still go up here, remove start input. And it's pretty easy to remove. We just want to take the start input and you want to disconnect it. And so you're thinking, okay, great, I've disconnected it. That means I can just connect it again later when I want it. No, there's no way to connect them again. So once you disconnect them, they're kind of just done. So you might as well just like clear out the variable. It's too bad there's not like a reconnect on it since you've already done all the work up here to set it up. But no, you have to just throw it away. So that's annoying. So anyway, so say we removed it, but now we want to put up the our other buttons for our left-right motion. So we'll have another add left, right input. And that will be the thing that adds our left, right buttons. So sorry, it's already like auto-completing some stuff for me. Let's see how good this is. This is all sort of not good because I'm just going to use their default locations. So I don't want, there's no a button placement of left or right yet. Would be nice if there was. I'm going to use the player input action. I'm going to use the left and right triggers. So I'm going to have the left, I'm going to use the left trigger. So it's going to kind of be like, if you're in VR, this would be kind of like tank mode. You grab the left trigger to move left and grab the right trigger to move right. And I'm going to use for the button icons, if we go back to our button icon list, there's this right chevron I'm going to use and a left chevron. That's going to be my buttons I'm going to use. Left chevron, right chevron, and I'm going to add a new button. I want to keep track of these buttons, though. I need to keep track of all these guys. Right input, left input, right input, and I want to exit input too. No one's added any questions yet. Hopefully all of you are still there. Someone give me a thumbs up in the chat if like I haven't lost you all or disconnected or something. Okay, good. Phew. So anyway, everyone was really quiet, so I wasn't sure if like you were all just like had tuned out or you were enthralled. Who knows? So we're going to add a left input, this dot right. And I'm going to add, that's this exit input so I can have a way for people to leave this. And I'm just going to use, the left primary for this one. And I'm going to use, I don't know, what's a good, unfortunately close, though it's in here, is not one that we actually have, but maybe I'll use contract because it's close, it looks close. For that, and I'm going to put this one in the center between the two. So, so now you might be thinking, okay, like, got to remember to add those callbacks, and true to a degree. So want one for the exit input. We definitely want to like just know when they call the exit, and then we'll do the thing. But I don't actually want to find out when they're pressing and releasing these left and right buttons for the way I'm doing it. All I want to have happen, I mean, I could do that way, but I just want to sort of show there's a different way of doing this too, is where you don't actually have to have these callbacks registered to still use these buttons. You can actually pull them as well. And so instead of actually connecting the left input and right input back up to callbacks, I am just going to check them every frame and see are they pressed or not. And that way I'll be able to move the player left or right based on whether they're being held down or not without having to do up watching for presses and released. It's a little bit of a contrived example here, but when you get into do some of the more advanced things that you can do with VR and this, that is the way to get some of the more advanced analog inputs out of the VR sticks. You have to check every frame to see how much they've changed. So instead of doing this, adding event handlers for the left and right, I'm going to instead start an on update loop here. So I'm going to have a little event subscription here. And so when I go into this mode, I'm going to say this.event on update subscription is this.world this dot connect local broadcast event world on update. And then this gives me the delta time that has passed since the last frame. And I'm just going to call this on update with the delta time like that. So so this is just basically your normal, on update loop. I'm just gonna call it, but I only want to turn this on when I'm in like my active mode where I'm reading these things. And then so likewise, I'm gonna eventually want to well, when I get to a few things, I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. So let's talk about the exit input. So this is pretty simple. If they've decided they're done doing our thing, we're gonna want to do the, if not pressed, then just return, because we only care about when they're pressing this button. But we need to take down all of that left right input stuff that we put up, and we need to add the start input back because now we're toggling back mode. So this is where you're getting into the sort of multimodal part of the player controls. Like you have to like actively manage like creating the connecting the local input and then disconnecting the local input when you're done with it. So likewise, I'm adding a remove left right input. So basically I have to, like I did with remove start input, I have to basically undo all of the stuff I did with the add left right input. So private remove left right input. And here it's just, I've got all these inputs to remove. The left input has to be disconnected. And then you should probably clear it out. And then, the right input needs to be disconnected and you should clear it. The exit input needs to be disconnected and then we need to clear it. And then we set up that update description. We don't want to do that anymore because we're not in the moving mode. We should disconnect that guy too, and then clear that. So this will like undo all the stuff we did in add. And then we're going and reusing that add start input that we used before. So that's just going to do the same stuff we did before. It's going to put the special right in the center and it's going to reset up the register callback. So it's going to be all ready to go. So let me go and quickly add this on update down here so it will compile. I'm not going to do anything for the moment. And that should be, let's hope it compiles. Come on, compile. All right. So now when I go in here, so you can see like it has, this is the special, this is the go into the mode. I clicked on it and then it put our left and right chevrons for the left and right motion up here. They're not hooked up to anything, so they don't do anything. And then this is our exit button. So if we click that, it tears both of those down and it goes back into the other mode. So it seems to be doing the two things we wanted it to do. So like this is one of the downsides of the player controls is that particularly on mobile, you don't get a lot of choice over where these things appear. Like it sort of sticks them places in sort of a priority order. Like if you have other things up, like this jump button's already up there. And so it's going to have to, it pushes them around into different positions. If you're in desktop, these are going to end up in different spots. You can see like the right mouse button is on the left and the left mouse button is on the right, just because for the desktop, the left mouse button is the right primary and the right mouse button is the left primary, but that's how that would look on desktop, and it has the little switching back and forth. So it all works. Any questions about any of that so far? I'm going to move on then, if not, to actually hooking up the interesting bit with the way the on update stuff works. So yes, question, King of Miami.
So I, in Chaos City, one of the worlds we recently did, I had two buttons showing in the center of the screen. But when a player grabs a weapon, in this case, one of those center buttons gets swapped over to the right side of the screen. And I know you kind of just
Really?
mentioned here, like, there's no, to me, it seems like there's no rhyme or reason sometimes for these
Yeah,
buttons.
so like when you grab something, you probably are getting the holstering system is coming into play, which I was going to talk about, but I think someone's going to talk about holstering in an upcoming. Is that why? Did you get the holstering thing coming into play there?
I'm not sure. So the camera, so it was a camera button that allows players to switch between third and first
Mhm.
player. And so for some reason that button placement, instead of staying at one of the center spots,
Mhm.
it got swapped over to like a lower left on the right side of the
Mhm.
screen. There was still the holstering swapping buttons and all the other buttons for the grabbable item. But this one was an extra. I don't want to say an extra one. I just switched positions
Yeah.
basically.
I mean, unfortunately, like I was saying, like the they control the layout, and I don't know why they don't give us more. They do have this button placement, preferred button placement thing, but it only has center or default as our choices. And I
Right.
guess you're saying that the center is not even obeyed sometimes. Um, I file like a feature request about this, like, hey, we really need these player controls to be more under our control,
Yeah.
so that we
Okay.
can like, because I really need them in the center, or I really need them symmetric. Like I really need to control these much better than we currently have access. And it's the way it is right now, but I think that's a valid comment that you should make to them.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so now we're in the on update. So like as I said, we weren't actually listening to the left input and the right input. I didn't add a callback to these guys. So how are we going to know when people are pressing on them? So what we're going to do is on update, every on update, we're just going to check. We're going to say, oh, left button down. And basically we're going to use that player input that we have, input. And then these guys have a bunch of additional actions on them. So there's pressed and released. Pressed means this button got pressed this frame. Doesn't mean that's different than held, which is that this button is currently held down. And released is this button got released this frame. So these are ways that you can pull and find out, like, what's the button doing right now? Did it just get pressed? Did it just get released? Or has it been held down? And then the advanced thing is that if this is one of the analog buttons on the VR controls, you get this axis value, which is actually a number that tells you how much the button is pressed or how much the sticks are being deflected. So this is the really advanced thing, and the really exciting thing for VR users is this axis control stuff that lets you do much more interesting things. But in this case, all we really care about here is, is it being held? And the right button, just want to know if it's being held. And so this is going to give us a Boolean, like, is it held this frame or is it not held this frame? And that's all I really want to know. So if neither of them are held, or if both of them are held, I'm just gonna like not do anything because I don't even know what to do. Like if you're not holding either one, then you're obviously not moving. But if you're holding them both down, like I don't know what that means. And I'm just also not going to do anything because that means you're confused. Darn it. Yeah, this is a very annoying thing that the desktop editor sometimes does. All right. Um, all right. So anyway, so this, if we got to this point, it means one of them is held down. So we're gonna find out where our player is. Let's see. We're gonna want their position. We also want to know like, we're going to make them move left or right based on when they press these buttons. Pressing the right button will move them right. Pressing the left button will move them left. But I need to know what the right position, what the right direction of the player is. And like some object like entity has a right, but a right property, but the player does not have a right property. But you can get the player's right by taking the players up and then crossing it with the players forward. So basically, this is going to give us the player's right direction, and this is just some vector math. It's just sort of like, maybe just remember it's up, cross, forward gives you the right direction of the player. And then I'm going to add a little constant here, which is like, or maybe I'll just add a little property here. Speed. This is going to be how fast the player moves, and I can adjust that if I want. So I'm going to figure out like how far I'm going to move the player. And here I'm just going to take that player right vector, and I'm just going to multiply it by the speed and the delta time. So this is just sort of the normal way that you do on update. You know, this is some little fraction of the time. It's like 0.1016 seconds. You know, I want them to move like 4.5 meters per second. I need to take a little fraction of time we're doing, and I need to move them that just a little bit this frame because I'm only doing this on frame. Then pretty simply, you know, if the right button was down, I'm just going to set the player's position. Anything like this, player position. Yeah, so if it's the right button's down, I'm just going to add that little right player delta. But otherwise, if the right button was not down, that means the left button must be down because one of them is down. I'm just going to subtract that delta from the player position. I'll do the in-place ones here just because for these in-place versions are just ever so slightly more efficient. They basically mean that I'm going to modify this variable because I don't care about it anymore, and it's just going to change the value. It just prevents it from allocating another copy of the vector. It's super, super in the weeds in terms of efficiency, but I'm sort of always in the thoughts of like, do I need this thing anymore? I don't. I really don't. This is really a temporary thing, so I can just change its value and save a little bit of allocation. Anyway, so that's all we're going to do on update. So if we go back over to our code, I think it's probably compiled. Oh, nope, still compiling. All right. So we go into this mode. Now, if I click on these, it just moves me right and left. If I go out, I'm back into normal motion again. So any questions about how that works? So we have like a multimodal UI here, and we have polling for some of these buttons. For some of these buttons, we're using event handlers, and it's switching back and forth between the two modes. I'll jump back over to the code really quick. And so now, assuming that's all pretty clear, I'm going to add a little tiny bit more to this. I'm just going to add another mode for this thing, which is going to be a focus interaction mode. So I'm just going to add another button, really. I'm going to sort of make it, I guess I'll call it an aim button. So I'm gonna add another kind. I know I'm gonna need these, so I'm gonna add the private add aim button. And you know, I'm gonna add you're gonna need an aim button here. Aim input. And I'm gonna use the aim. I'll use like the left secondary here. Left secondary is like the Y button. I'm gonna use the aim, and I'm gonna also put this guy in the center, so it's next to my little exit button, because I don't want it to interfere with my left and right buttons if those guys are up. And then I'm gonna need a callback for this guy. I don't want to do that. On aim rest. And I'm going to need another remove aim, which is going to be just like the other stuff. So let's see, where do I want to put this? So I'm going to, like at the start, I'm going to want to add this aim button. And this aim button is going to send us into focus interaction. Oh, Stormdecker. Silly question. It's kind of loosely related, but TopicCon, my desktop editor is updated to latest as far as I can tell, and I have audio import, but I don't see the device selection when I choose the mobile preview. Oh, that thing? That might be rolling out still. You're talking about this mobile device
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, talking about that thing. Yeah, I don't see that. I have everything else up to date as far as I can tell, but mobile device does not show up. I was looking forward to it, so I was just kind of curious.
It might be coming soon. I get a couple of extra features sometimes.
No, it was in the patch notes, but it's possible it's not toggled for live yet.
It's not, if you don't have it, it's not live yet, but maybe it's coming soon. I
Yeah, it
didn't
was in
say
the release
anything.
notes. They really pasted in the release notes for the for
It
the
was in the release notes. Okay, well, I don't know.
yes.
Whatever reason I have it, but not everybody got everything in the release notes right away, so it might be rolling out. So,
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
all right. So we're gonna do the same thing. We have the add aim button, and uh, and this is gonna send us into focus interaction mode. And then, so we're going to want to do sort of the same thing. So like here, when we remove the start input, maybe we'll just leave the aim button there. Um, yeah, we're not going to take the aim button out. We're just going to leave the aim button up all the time. So you can have it in both modes. But we're going to be using focus interactions. So one of the things you do need to do with focus interactions, you do need to add a bunch of additional event handlers. And previously in some of my previous examples, I tried like adding and removing these like as you're going in and out of focus interaction, but I don't really think that's necessary. I've found that like they seem to um, they seem to be fine. Like if you just leave them on registered all the time, because like you're not going to get these events unless you're in focused interaction. And as long as you're okay with using the same events every time you go into focused interaction, you don't really need to like add and remove them each time you go in and out. So to simplify things, I'm just going to add them once when on world start um, for this particular example. So these are special player controls events, so you need to get them from there. They're not on like the code block events, they're not on the world. And these guys have an interaction info. Um, but you want to focus start. What's wrong here? Something I have too many parentheses or something. Yeah, wrong parentheses. Okay. So we need all of these guys. There's a focus start, there's a focused end, and there's not input canceled. It's moved. And um, also another thing that you probably want to listen to is there's a code block event for when they leave focus interaction. They are exited focus. Code block events, that's fine. So this just tells you when the player exits focused interaction because players can just decide to leave focused interaction at any time. Um, so you're gonna want to watch for that. So you find out when the player decided to bail on you, has gone back into normal mode. So here we'll need to add some on focus start. Call this info. Hopefully it will doing like a lot of random guessing. The problem with co-pilots, they sometimes go into nonsense land with garbage. So this is the focus exit. So this is the focus being exited by the player. So this means that they've decided to bail and they're leaving focus interaction. And we also need the on aim pressed. Interaction will be a problem. Oh, I need that. These are all arrays. It does support multi-touch on mobile, so you can get more than one touch point, but we're just going to use one. And then the other thing I added here was the on aim pressed. So this is on aim pressed is them going starting focus interaction. So with aim pressed, so this is the thing that's going to send us into focus interaction mode. And what we need to do here, we're basically we just need to tell the system that we're going into focus interaction mode. So we need to tell the player we gotta get our player, and then we probably want to only do this if pressed too. Yeah, if not pressed, just bail. Player enter focused interaction mode. That's all you need to do to enter focus interaction mode is you just call that on the player. And then when they leave focus interaction mode, we might want to do something that cleans up. But right now, though, we'll just sort of show like what happens when they go into focus interaction mode. So we start the world. So now I have this little aim button here. So this thing is all working as before. But now if I go into aim, I'm in focused interaction mode. It's a little weird because like this other button is still here, but like I'm in focused interaction mode still. And so like this is kind of a little bit confusing and weird. This up here is the way you exit focused interaction mode. And then these buttons came back. And so it's like, maybe you don't want like the confusion of like, you notice that when I went in, it like hid some of the buttons. I don't know, maybe you don't want it to be confusing like that. So, what I would probably do is to like make it so that when you're doing in focus interaction and you get full access to the screen, there's no like stuff in the way. So I would probably like remove all the other buttons. I'd remove the aim button, I'd remove the start button, I'd remove the left input, like whatever's up, I'm just going to remove all of my other buttons. So I have a nice clean screen with like no other stuff in the way that's like popping in or appearing or disappearing strangely on me. And then when they exit focus interaction here, I'm just gonna put them. I'm just gonna go back to like the normal mode. I mean, you get the player here. I believe you're only going to get this input if you're if the player, this is a local, I think, event, but if it's not, just for safety, make sure that the player exiting focus interaction is you. Otherwise, just ignore it. But here, we're just going to go back to like our normal start mode, which is where we're going to have we're going to add the aim input up, and we'll add back the start input. So this way, you cannot make them visible or not. That was what I was talking about earlier. The only way you can do is when you disconnect them, they become invisible, but there's no way to reconnect them. Once they are disconnected, they're basically dead, and there's no reconnect button for whatever reason. So you have to basically reconnect them with the whole line with which button it is and what button icon it is and what event handler is going to be used. I don't know why there's not like a disconnect reconnect. I mean, you can ask the input, like one of the properties of the input is, are you connected or not? You can find out, but you can only read if it's connected or not. If it's not connected, you can't do anything. It's like, oh, it's just dead. So I don't know why there's no like connect that goes along with disconnect to like reconnect something that you disconnected earlier. Custom icons would be nice. Yes, there's like been some talk about them, and I've seen some like discussions of being able to use our own icons, but they seem to be stuck in 2P Landia or something because like clearly some of the 2P worlds seem to have them, but like we don't have them yet. So for whatever reason, they haven't shipped it out to us. So anyway, so I just changed this to be a little bit cleaner when you go. So like now, if you're in this mode and you're moving around, and if we go into aim mode, everything goes away. We have a nice clear screen. You can't get rid of these guys up here. There's no way to get rid of those, but everything's nice and clear. There's no stuff you might accidentally click on. And then, you can leave focus interaction and it sends us right back to our original mode. Any questions about that? There's definitely a custom icon field in desktop. Yeah, it doesn't work though. Storming Decker. Like I've tried putting stuff in there, it doesn't do anything. So it's obviously a feature that is not yet ready for prime time because they haven't made it available to us. So anyway, not to play the point, but could you put buttons as children of an object and then turn them object on and off? These buttons aren't on objects. These are locally scripted globals that run on the player's headset. So they're not actually attached to any object. So there's no, so if you look in the way this API works, like it's actually very unusual in that like I'm basically just calling this global thing out, plucking it out of the air. It's not attached to an entity or anything. And I'm saying connect to this thing, and I'm getting back something that I can use. I mean, this is part of the reason why you have to pass this here. This is the disposable object, because this is how it like cleans up these things. If this object, this control component goes away, it's going to automatically clean up these player inputs for you because you pass this disposable object to the API. They didn't used to have this here, and there was a lot of leaking because people would forget to clean them up when they transferred ownership, and then like these player inputs would be running on someone's headset with no way to control them anymore. So it was bad. But so now they have this, and so it makes sure it automatically cleans up. Anyway, so the final bit here, kind of running over a little bit, but I'm just going to kind of hopefully wrap up this final bit. So I have these, we're going to be in focus interaction, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to make it able to like detect some objects in the distance here. So I'm going to add a couple of objects out here, some shapes. We have a sphere out here, and a capsule, and maybe something more obviously different, like a in a random order now. Wait, where did my capsule go? No, my capsule went there. Hold on. Can I select it? No. Capsule. Get rid of that guy. And let's put a light bulb or whatever this thing is. So let's see, these guys are all gonna add a tag on these guys. I call them object or something. I want to make sure they're all animated so I can do something to them later. So anyway, I tagged them all object, all tagged object so that I'll be able to like detect them with the raycast later, and they're all animated. And then I'm going to go back up to my groups of player controls, and I'm just going to add an additional item to them. So usually the nice thing about these is, remember, I just duped them out. I just copied and then pasted them. So I'm just going to, like, rather than editing each one of these, I'm just going to delete most of them. And then I'm just going to add a raycast to one of them. Oh, I should add the raycast to the code first, though. So here, add a raycast. So this raycast, I'm going to have it detect objects called object. And then, assuming this thing is recompiled, and I have this raycast field here, I'll put the raycast in the field. And then now that I have these things, maybe I'll just put them together into a little parent. This will be my control. And then I'll just make some copies of this guy. Clearly there, I didn't get them aligned quite right, but you get the idea. So now I have just duped them back out. So now each one of these guys has, this guy running our script, and each one of them points at its own raycast. So everybody has their own. All right. So that just sets us up now for what we're going to do when people are in focused interaction mode. So in focused interaction, you get these three events. The focus start, that's when they, like, press down on the screen. The focus move, which is when they drag their finger across the screen. And the focused end, which is, like, where they're going to lift up on the screen. So I'm going to, like, when they start and they move, I think I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go raycast and see if they are hitting something. And then when they end, I'm going to, like, commit the raycast, to, like, make something happen. So I have, like, do raycast or object or something like that. I'm just going to pass the first info. And I'm just going to say, this is going to be, like, not a committed. These both are, like, just tests, not committing to this position. And then on this last one, this one would be like, yes, now this is where I am committing to this position. So again, this info is an array of interaction infos, which has a bunch of information. I'm not doing multi-touch here, so I'm just going to get the first one out of the list. And then I'm going to say, for the start or when they're dragging, I'm just going to, like, track where they are. And then when they lift their finger up, I'm going to be like, okay, now that's where they really want something to happen. So we'll just implement this little bit of code. I'll do raycast for object. Please commit. There's a bunch of junk here that it came up with. Right, so if there's no, so let's do this. That's gonna be the raycast. If there's no raycast, then, like, something's screwed up. Oftentimes, when I'm adding things that are nullable properties like that, like in the start method, I will do something where, or even in the pre-start even, I might do something where I say, if no this prop start recast, throw new error. SMC is required. This is going to blow up the whole runtime, but it's going to fail hard and it's going to fail fast. So what happened? It just vanished on me, didn't it? I hope I haven't hit this problem. What's going on? There's been some issues in this week where the desktop editor starts to fight with you and delete things out from underneath you. And I think it might have just done that. Let's see if will stay here. I lost a bunch of what's going on here. Start input does not exist. What do you mean it does not exist? Oh, there's an extra stray thing here. Maybe that's almost okay. Oof. I have had problems where like it's been reverting things out from underneath me, but I think we recovered this time. Yeah, I kept reverting my backup. Yeah, like it's definitely this release since this 2.10 came out. Like a lot of people have been seeing fighting sometimes with the desktop editor. Well, like because it just erased that code out from underneath me. But fortunately, I was able to undo it back somehow. So anyway, all right. But anyway, sometimes I do this. This will fail hard. Like your whole world will stop working if you forget to put the raycast here. But you'll get this really nice error message on your console, and you like will immediately know something's wrong, and you'll have to go fix it. And I really prefer to just have things fail catastrophically badly for me really quickly, so that I can know, oh, I got to go fix something and then fix it, rather than having it being some subtle little error that only creeps up sometimes because you only go some down the path where you try to access the raycast. And then only then, like half after your world's been running for a little while, do you find out, oh, I forgot to wire that up. I'd rather it just fail right on start. So I tend to do that a bunch. But this is good protective code too, to just make sure that it's there. So const raycast result. This I'm gonna use the raycast. We're gonna do call as raycast gizmo. Raycast. And then let's see, it didn't choose the right things. World ray origin and the world ray direction. So one of the things you get in the info is you get the world ray origin of the where they touched on the screen. They give you the vector position of that screen position in the world. And then world ray direction is the direction from that point they touched on the screen into the world. And those are conveniently the two things you need for a raycast. You need a point of origin and you need a direction. So you can just pass those straight into the raycast. And then this raycast is going to basically go from the point where they pressed on the screen and tell you, try to figure out what's there. So, raycast result. So raycast result is going to be either null or it's going to be a hit. So if it was null, it means you missed everything. So if we got a hit, if it's defined, if it's something, if it's not null, then we also want to see if the raycast target type is raycast target type of entity, because we're trying to hit an entity. We don't care if they're hitting something static. We really want to know if the raycast target type can be a player, an entity, or static. And we really want to know when they're hitting one of those entities that we had tagged. So if it did hit an entity, then we can get the target mesh, which is going to be the raycast result target entity, and we'll just as a mesh entity because we know it's going to be a mesh entity. Target, just target. So this is like an important thing for this is like this raycast result is a tagged union, and this tag is target type. And so if we check that the target type is a particular tag, it's going to enable us to access fields on the result that otherwise we wouldn't be able to access. And for instance, if we had just done this and we wanted to say, const target equals Raycasting result target, it's like, no, target doesn't exist. But this is the thing we're using here. But like here, it's like the target doesn't exist. It's because we haven't narrowed the type enough to be one that includes the target field. So that's why it is important to like use when you're using tagged unions types like that to check the tag. Once we check the tag and we see it's the valid type, then this field becomes available to us and we can access it. So we're going to get this mesh, which is going to be the target that we tried to reach. And I think I'm going to want to, so what I'm going to do is basically I'm going to color the mesh when it's there, and then when you leave it, I'm going to like turn it back to normal. And if it's the final, if it's the commit, then I'm going to color it a different color. But I'm going to need to keep track of what the last mesh was so that I can clear it if they move off of it. So I'm just going to need a really last target mesh. Might be a mesh entity. So we're back down here. Anyway, so if this target mesh is not the same as the last target mesh, then I'm going to need to clear the last target mesh while tint strength. So I'm going to be using tinting here. So I'm just going to turn the tint strength off on the last one. And for this target mesh, I'm going to set the tint strength to 1, and I'm going to set this tint color to red or blue, I guess. Blue is probably good. And I'm going to have to remember that this one now is the new last target mesh. Otherwise, if we completely missed everything, if we had a last target mesh, we want to make sure that we turn off its tint strength and we forget about it. And then the one last thing is like if it was a commit, like this was actually the release. So these first two, this is like press, this is move, and this is they're lifting their finger off. It's the commit. Like if it's the commit case, even if it's the same mesh, I'm going to want to change the color. So like here, if it's a commit, I'm going to make it red. Otherwise, if it's not a commit, I'm going to leave it blue. So anyway, basically all we're doing here, we're raycasting. If we hit the thing one of the tagged types, if it's not the same as the last one, then we're going to untint the old one and tint the new one. If we missed, we're just going to untint the old one. Even if it is the same as the last one, but we're now committing, like we're lifting our finger up, then we're going to still also tint it again, but we're going to change its color to red instead of blue. So if we go and run this code, hopefully it will all work. So we're here in the world. We have all of our other stuff as before. And then we can go into aim mode and see now if I drag over. So when I enter and then I drag it around, it's blue. When I leave it, that becomes the last mesh and I clear it. But if I lift my finger up on it, it turns red. That's the commit of the lift is the focus interaction end. So anyway, that is pretty much the extent of this talk. the one last thing I wanted to talk about, where's my notes here again? Some of the discussion. So this is, we did the creating of the player manager, which you can use for a whole bunch of different things like cameras and player controls and all, including default things. We discussed multimodal player inputs. We did a focus interaction model, which has a lot of similarities to the player inputs. And I just want to do like one final touch on the advanced VR features. And so I think that, as I mentioned, player input action here. So these are all normal buttons like jump and right primary and right secondary and right tertiary, but right grip and right trigger, these are analog inputs. So these guys, and then the right x-axis and the right y-axis, these are the sticks for the right stick and then there's also a corresponding the left grip and the left trigger, which are also analog buttons, and then the left x and y axis. These are all analog inputs. And the thing that's interesting about them is if you use sort of the polling approach we use for our left-right thing, you can let me find axis value here. So you can actually check the axis value of these things and see how pressed the trigger button is, or how depressed the grip button is, or how far over to the left or right or up and down they put one of the VR sticks. And they give you a number between -1 and 1. So for the sticks, like -1 is all the way left or all the way down, and 1 is all the way right or all the way up. And there's a little note here about like the press state for these things means when it goes through 0.5. So like you can see if someone's just has the trigger pressed a little bit, not enough so that it would have sent a pressed event, just tiny bit pressed. You can still get that information using the axis value on the trigger, the triggers go from 0 to 1 because they don't have a negative value. The sticks have negative values because there's left and right. So you can do some really interesting things here by, like, you could have a throttle control for like a remote control car where as you could measure how much they're depressing the trigger to see how much gas to give and how fast to make the car go. And unfortunately, there's no analog for that kind of thing in mobile or web. So you can get the axis, so yeah, the left x-axis and left is available, and the left y-axis is available on desktop because those are the WASD keys. So you can find out on the desktop if they're using the locomotion, but for unclear reasons, like they just did not make the stick controls for mobile available. I mean, they're clearly have them here. Like you can see there is a little stick, but we have no way of getting access to this stick information. I really hope that at some point they have all the infrastructure there. They should just hook up this little stick so that we could actually read what the stick is doing on mobile. It would be great. So maybe file a feature request. I filed my share of them. Maybe if enough people do, they'll add this guy, because it seems like it would be really great for them to add this. I don't know if they'd be able to add this thing doesn't really work like the sticks do on the looking around. This doesn't really work quite the same way as the sticks do on the VR, but this thing over here really works very much like the sticks on VR. So I don't know why it's not available as an input for us. All right, well, thank you all, and I hope to see you all whatever we do next for workshops. Bye.